Imagine dedicating, like, your entire professional life to serving this completely volatile, unpredictable boss.
The worst kind of boss.
Right. And you do everything by the book. You are the quiet engine keeping the whole operation running. But instead of being rewarded, that competence actually makes you a target.
Yeah, because it threatens them.
Exactly. And suddenly this boss turns on you.
Hmm.
They sentence you to ruin. They publicly humiliate your family. And they lock you away in the dark.
It's just the ultimate soul-crushing betrayal.
It really is. But then, a few weeks later, you're sitting in the dark and you are handed the absolute perfect opportunity. You learn that this exact same boss is about to be utterly destroyed by his own enemies.
And you don't even have to lift a finger.
You literally have to do nothing. Do you take your karmic revenge and just let him fall? Or do you risk your life to save the person who completely destroyed yours?
It is a phenomenal dilemma. I mean, it gets right to the core of what we're unpacking today.
It does. And welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. Before we get into it, I just want to humbly ask you to hit the subscribe button for the Simplified Summary YouTube channel.
Yeah, please do.
And drop a like on the video and, share your valuable comments below to join the discussion. We really want to hear your take on this.
Absolutely. The comments are always great.
So our mission today is to explore this masterful piece of literature that wrestles with this exact scenario. It's a single story titled Raja Bhaktwar, or The Patriot.
Written by the legendary author Munshi Premchand, right?
Exactly, sourced from his Mansarovar collection, part 6 to be specific. And today, we're going completely under the hood of this narrative to extract its timeless lessons.
We're looking at, the psychology of loyalty and the intricate mechanics of how toxic leadership destroys institutions.
Yes, and that profound, really agonizing choice between enduring domestic tyranny or submitting to foreign subjugation.
What Premchand does so brilliantly here is he takes what looks like a high-stakes political thriller and he just uses it as a scalpel.
A scalpel, I like that.
Yeah, he's dissecting human psychology. He forces you, the listener, to really figure out what loyalty actually means when the institution you're loyal to is, actively trying to crush you.
So let's jump right into the environment that breeds this kind of conflict. We have our protagonist, Raja Bhaktwar Singh.
Right.
He is a general, and by all accounts, a remarkably capable one. But the defining characteristic that sets him apart in the sources is, his philosophy of service.
Which is so crucial to his whole character.
Right, because Bhaktwar views himself as a servant of the state, the overarching entity, not just a blind, sycophantic follower of the king himself.
And in a healthy organization, that distinction is the bedrock of good governance. You want people loyal to the mission, not just the CEO.
Exactly. But the king's court in this story is, it's the exact opposite of a healthy organization.
Oh, it's an ecosystem of pure paranoia. The king has surrounded himself with these yes-men.
Like his minister, Roshanudula.
Yes, Roshanudula, along with this faction of English courtiers. And these people aren't administrators. They are purely opportunists.
And they are actively, systematically whispering in the king's ear, just poisoning him against his best general.
What's fascinating here is how toxic environments function mechanically. In a corrupt system, competence isn't just unappreciated.
It's an actual threat.
Exactly. It's viewed as an existential threat. Roshanudula and these English courtiers, they do not care about the stability or the prosperity of the state.
No, not at all.
Their entire power derives from their proximity to the king's ego. So Bhaktwar, by actually caring about the state and, refusing to play the game of constant flattery, he makes them look bad.
His very existence highlights their uselessness.
Yeah.
So they manufacture a crisis, and the king, fueled by his own insecurities and these constant whispers, he completely snaps.
He just goes off the deep end.
He does. He orders Bhaktwar's immediate execution. And the language used here is really crucial. He brands Bhaktwar a Namak Haram.
Which is such a heavy term.
It really is. Now, in a lot of translations, that just gets flattened to the word traitor. But legally breaking a law and being a Namak Haram, those are two very different things culturally, aren't they?
Oh, completely different. Namak Haram literally translates to being untrue to the salt.
Untrue to the salt. Wow.
Yeah, in South Asian historical and cultural contexts, eating someone's salt means partaking in their sustenance. It binds you in this deep, almost sacred covenant of loyalty.
So it's way more personal than just treason.
Exactly. To be called Namak Haram is not just a legal accusation. It is an accusation of a profound moral and spiritual failing. It basically means you lack fundamental human integrity.
It's designed to destroy his honor, not just his career, and the physical degradation completely mirrors that verbal assault. Bakhtiar is publicly stripped of his royal robes, his hilat.
Which is a huge deal.
Right, this isn't just taking away a fancy coat. The hilat was a physical manifestation of the ruler's favor and the wearer's status in the hierarchy. By ripping it off him in public, they are stripping him of his very identity.
It's total public humiliation.
And to seal his fate, they find a loaded pistol in his pocket during the arrest. The king immediately seizes on this, misinterpreting it as an active assassination plot.
Even the head of police, the Kotwal, he actually hesitates to make this arrest.
Because he knows better.
Right, because everyone outside the king's immediate bubble knows Bakhtiar is the only one holding the state together. But Roshanudullah pressures the Kotwal, leveraging the king's rage to just eliminate his rival.
It makes me think of an architectural structure, Like Bakhtiar isn't just a brick in the wall, he's the keystone of the arch.
That's a great analogy.
But this brings up a massive psychological question. Why does someone like Bakhtiar, who is capable, principled, clearly possesses options, why does he stay in an environment where he has to walk on eggshells?
Knowing his life hangs by a thread.
Yeah, depending on the king's daily mood. It's like a principled CEO or a modern-day whistleblower who refuses to leave a corrupt board of directors. Okay, let's unpack this. Why stay?
It's the psychological trap of duty. Bakhtiar is operating on a completely different moral axis than the king. He stays because he understands causality.
He knows what will happen if he leaves.
Exactly. He knows the mechanics of the state. He knows that if he steps away, the fragile infrastructure that protects the everyday citizens will instantly collapse.
Which is exactly what toxic leaders fail to see.
Yes, they suffer from a severe delusion. They mistake sycophancy for loyalty. They punish the very people who deliver hard truths or maintain the systems, all because those hard truths bruise their fragile egos.
Which perfectly sets up the aftermath. And this is where the narrative takes a really sharp, unexpected turn into human psychology. Bakhtiar is thrown into a dark, damp dungeon.
A literal dungeon.
But the king's vindictiveness doesn't stop there. He extends the punishment to Bakhtiar's innocent family. His elderly parents, the women of the household, the young children, they are all paraded barefoot through the unforgiving streets.
And thrown into prison alongside him. It's total degradation.
It really is. But here's a psychological twist. After a month in that dungeon, Bakhtiar actually feels a profound sense of peace. He is relieved.
It sounds totally counterintuitive.
Well, yeah. Wait, hold on. He feels peace while his elderly parents and young children are suffering barefoot in a cell.
I know it sounds.
Doesn't that cross the line from relieved to just fundamentally callous? I mean, is it just a psychological survival mechanism to deal with the trauma?
It's not callousness. It's actually the resolution of cognitive dissonance. It isn't that he doesn't care about his family's suffering.
Okay, then what is it?
It's that the agonizing anticipation, like the waiting for the axe to fall, is neurologically more taxing than the axe actually falling.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if you look at how the human nervous system processes chronic stress, it makes perfect sense. In the dungeon, the rules of reality are finally clear. He is a prisoner.
The waiting game is over.
Right. At the court, the rules changed by the minute based on a tyrant's whim. Your brain is constantly scanning for threats. Who is whispering what? What mood is the king in? What trap is being laid today?
That invisible psychological toll must be exhausting.
Exactly. The anxiety of the unknown has finally been replaced by the certainty of his situation.
That actually makes sense. The mental gymnastics have finally stopped. And Premchand brilliantly illustrates the contrast by showing us what happens outside the dungeon walls while Bakhtiar is finding his inner peace.
The whole place falls apart.
Completely. Without Bakhtiar acting as that keystone, the arch crumbles instantly. The mechanics of the state just fail. Soldiers aren't getting paid.
Which is a recipe for disaster.
Right. The enforcement mechanism is gone, so merchants are being looted in broad daylight. Prices are skyrocketing. The public is in an absolute uproar.
Because you've removed the apex predator from an ecosystem, and suddenly the scavengers overpopulate. Bakhtiar was the administrative gravity keeping the corrupt officials in check.
And the king essentially cut off his own legs and is now wondering why he can't walk.
That's exactly it. It proves how fragile institutions are when they are built on fear and the unpredictable whims of a single person, rather than on the quiet, systemic competence of true public servants.
This brings us to the ultimate stress test of duty. What happens when your oppressor suddenly becomes the victim?
Oh, this is where it gets really tense.
Because the state is in total chaos, the enemies of the crown realize the door is wide open, and they bring the conflict directly into the pitch black of Bhaktwar's cell.
At 10 p.m.
Right, it's 10 p.m. A fellow loyalist, Captain Sahid, manages to sneak into the dungeon with terrifying intelligence.
And Bhaktwar is just sitting there in the dark.
Yeah, and the captain tells him that the king, completely oblivious to the chaos he has caused, plans to go out in disguise at midnight.
Which is such a classic, tragic move of an isolated tyrant.
Right, he has to go in disguise because he has no idea what is actually happening in his own kingdom.
He's totally out of touch.
Exactly. And he's taking Rushan-Adola and those 5 English courtiers to secretly gauge the mood of the public. But the captain has learned from an English barber that this whole midnight stroll is a setup.
A massive trap.
It is an elaborate trap. The English courtiers are planning to overthrow the king right there at the Gomti River.
The irony is just staggering.
I mean, how insulated do you have to be that the barbers know about the coup, but the king doesn't? It's a literal Trojan horse scenario, but the king is willingly walking himself into the belly of the horse.
He's hand-delivering himself to his enemies.
So, if you are Bhaktwar sitting in the dark, you have been handed a gift. The man who ruined your life is about to be taken out by the very sycophants he chose over you. Why shouldn't Bhaktwar just sit back and enjoy the show?
And that is the ideological climax of the story right there. The captain actually makes that exact pragmatic argument to Bhaktwar.
Oh, he tells him to let it happen.
Yeah, the captain argues that letting the English take over might actually be a net positive for the state. He suggests that British administration could result in more efficient governance, structured systems, and significantly less arbitrary cruelty for the everyday citizens.
The same citizens who are currently starving and being looted.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because Bhaktwar completely rejects that logic, delivering a profound foundational statement.
His core philosophy.
Right. He says that he prefers the tyranny of their own people over the slavery of outsiders. He acknowledges the king is a monster, but he believes that foreign rule will lead to the permanent enslavement of the entire nation and the total destruction of their cultural identity.
We have to unpack the mechanics of this because Premchand is writing with a fierce anti-colonial message here.
Let's get into that. Is Bhaktwar right? Is bad self-governance truly always better than efficient foreign rule?
Well, Bhaktwar is making a vital, sophisticated distinction between a temporary internal political crisis and a permanent existential loss of sovereignty.
Can you explain how that loss of sovereignty actually works in this context? Because on paper, if the new management stops the looting, a lot of people might say, hey, great, sign me up.
Right. It seems appealing in the short term. But it comes down to the mechanism of self-determination. The expert manipulation by the English courtiers here, using the king's own flaws and paranoia to orchestrate a soft coup, is exactly how imperialism historically functioned.
Ah, so it's a playbook.
It is. The colonizers didn't always need to invade with an army. They exploited internal factionalism. They found the cracks in the court, widened them, and presented themselves as the efficient alternative to local chaos.
The saviors, basically.
Exactly. But Bhaktwar realizes that while a bad king is a tragedy, the local population still owns the mechanism of the state. A bad king can eventually be overthrown by his own people or reformed or outlived.
But if you invite an empire in to solve your internal dispute,
they don't leave. You give up the right to decide your own future permanently.
It's like the difference between having a terrible, incompetent manager at a company you founded versus allowing a hostile corporate takeover.
That's a great way to put it.
Yes, the hostile takeover might fix the supply chain, but you lose all your equity and you will never sit in the big chair again. Bhaktwar is basically saying, I hate this guy, but this is our house. We don't hand the deed to a stranger just because the roof is leaking.
Precisely. Bhaktwar separates his personal, entirely justified grievance against the king from the larger, overarching fate of the nation.
He's seeing the big picture.
He's looking at the timeline of history, whereas Rushan-Adola and the king are only looking at the timeline of their own egos. He recognizes that sacrificing independence for the illusion of temporary stability is a permanent, fatal error.
So having made his philosophical choice, philosophy has to turn into action. He isn't going to let the takeover happen.
Time is running out, right?
The scene shifts to the Gomti River. The king is dragged there by the English courtiers and the traitorous minister, and the illusion finally shatters.
The king finally gets it.
He realizes he has been completely betrayed by the people he showered with wealth. But bursting out of the shadows, Bakhtiar and the captain arrive. They physically fight off the traitors, risk their lives, and successfully save the king.
Which is an incredible moment of grace considering his family is still barefoot in his cell.
It's wild, and the very next morning, the dynamic completely flips. The king is totally humbled. He holds a grand court, restores Bakhtiar, places him at his right hand, and offers him the absolute highest post in the entire state.
Total vindication.
Right. The bad guy realizes he was wrong. The good guy gets the promotion. But Bakhtiar refuses it. He turns down the ultimate promotion.
He says no to the highest seat.
Yes. He states that he can serve the state much better from the outside because he knows the king's erratic, volatile nature isn't going to magically change overnight. So what does this all mean for how we define success and power? By turning down the post, it feels like Bakhtiar is neutralizing the king's only leverage over him.
That is exactly the mechanism at play. Bakhtiar fundamentally dismantles the king's entire power structure without ever sitting on the throne himself.
Wow.
He realizes that a true well-wisher cannot be a sycophantic courtier. If he takes that high post, he places himself right back in the system that requires his obedience to the king's whims.
And to add one final masterful layer of irony, when the king angrily declares he wants to feed the treacherous Roshanudala to the dogs,
Which is brutal.
Bakhtiar actually steps in and saves his worst enemy's life. He saves the boss who ruined him, saves the rival who plotted his death, and turns down absolute power.
By doing so, he proves that he operates on an entirely different plane of justice and mercy, completely removed from the petty vengeance of the court.
He's untouchable morally.
He tells the king, you cannot buy my loyalty with a promotion, just as you could not execute my principles in a dungeon. True power, Premchand is arguing, is ultimate self-mastery. Bakhtiar elevates himself above the entire toxic ecosystem.
It is an incredible display of boundary setting. He's basically saying, I will save the state from collapse, but I will not let your dysfunction destroy my peace again.
It's beautiful, really.
It is. And that brings the relevance of the story right back into the room with us, the listeners. Because we all navigate flawed systems, we all deal with toxic environments or leaders who punish competence because it threatens their ego.
We've all been there in some capacity.
Exactly. Raja Bhaktwar teaches us that true loyalty isn't about blind obedience to a title or a person. It is about adherence to a higher principle. It challenges us to ask if we are acting out of personal ego or for the greater good of our community or organization.
It's a profound lens for self-reflection. But I want to leave you, the listener, with a different angle to think about, something that pushes past Bakhtiar's incredible moral discipline.
Okay, let's hear it.
We have praised his ability to walk away from the high post to preserve his own moral peace. But by stepping outside the arena, does Bakhtiar inadvertently abandon the everyday citizens he originally swore to protect?
Oh, that is a really sharp question.
If Bhaktwar Singh had chosen to stay in his cell and let the king be overthrown, would history have judged him as a traitor to the crown, or as a pragmatist who ended a tyrant's reign?
That completely flips the perspective.
Sometimes, being a true patriot means making the hardest, most unrewarded choices. Does preserving your own inner peace come at the cost of leaving the vulnerable to the mercy of the next Roshanudala?
Are you preserving your integrity, or are you just abandoning the ship to save yourself? It's a heavy, fascinating thought to mull over.
It really is.
We've unpacked the mechanics of loyalty, the anatomy of a toxic court, and the immense weight of choosing sovereignty over comfort. Think about your own environment. When the system breaks down and the enemies are at the gates, how do you define your duty?
Something to really think about.
Definitely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Once again, please remember to subscribe to the Simplified Summary channel, hit that like button, and definitely drop a comment with your own take on Bakhtiar's decision. We'll see you next time.